What's up, everybody? Welcome to Design Discord. Unfortunately, today my co-host Alyssa had some technical difficulties, but you have me and you have the famous Chen and Kai from Chen and Kai Studio. And guys, what is going on? How's it
Well,
going?
good.
How's it going?
We're just preparing for a show that opens on November 5th at the Future Perfect. So
I know that's what we
yeah,
want to dive into. We want to actually, everyone in the design industry already kind of knows you guys a little bit, but you guys have a long history. You guys have been doing design for a really long time. I mean, since I've been in it, you guys have been in it, or longer. So tell us a little bit about, because it's also interesting that you guys are partners. Like it's a duo that is not like a married couple or something like that, but a duo that just met and has decided to have this studio practice together. So tell us a little bit about how y'all met and started this.
It is a little strange. So we met in at Pratt. We both went to Pratt in the early 2000s. I was a year ahead of Chen, and I think the greatest thing that the school gave us was to dump us out into Brooklyn in the early 2000s, and we each had our own studios, which were basically a mess. But we decided to start working together. So the first things we did were a collaboration, and really the name of our studio, the fact that we don't have like a brand or a name that we've sort of thought of, is that just this ongoing collaboration that has happened for the last you know X number of years.
yeah. We never intended to start a company together.
You
So
did, yeah.
rewind a little bit. So we went to Kai started at Pratt in 2002. I started in 2003.
Wow.
And I think like when you're coming to Brooklyn at that time, it's kind of like showing up in Soho in the 70s or something. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
very like
totally.
there's nothing's going on and it's just cheap to hang out. And like that's kind
Right.
of what was great about graduating when we did was like you could just hang out for, 5, maybe 10 years and just, it's cheap to live there and you don't really need to make that much money to like kind of experiment and do your own thing, you know?
Right.
Chen was working in the back of a Moss in a sort of um, I don't know what your title position of.
Yeah, so yeah, right after school, I was working at Moss, which was the design gallery at the time.
Right,
People
I
don't
remember that.
really, I feel like it's like this new generation don't know about it, but from 1994 until I think 2012, it was the like, Death Star, design gallery. Like that was it.
Wasn't it was in Chelsea, right? It was
It was in
like
Soho.
it
It
was
was
in
the first
Soho?
design
Okay.
store in Soho. So Murray
Okay.
opened at I think 146 Green Street. In
Okay.
Murray Moss opened his store Moss at 146 Green Street. It was a very small store. They carried like Alessi and like all these like European brands that you couldn't really get at the time. And then they started the reason there's all these design stores in Soho, there at least there were, was because Murray was selling so much of this stuff that they decided to open up their own showrooms. Then when Metro Pictures moved from Soho to Chelsea, they took over that 150 space, that is a really big
Mm.
space. And I think Harry Allen designed that space to be kind of like a museum. Everything was in vitrines, like the philosophy behind that experience was that like everything was like a show and the sales staff were these people that were there to guide you. So like it was difficult to look at the stuff. You had to get somebody to help you and like walk you through the space. And my job fresh out of school was to like kind of go through and like make sure everything was arranged perfectly. And because often the things in the vitrines were one-offs, somebody buys it, you might have to rearrange not just a little group of objects around that hole, but like it does it doesn't make sense anymore, that story. So you have to like know what's in the basement and have this catalog
Mhm.
of objects. And then like maybe you got to rearrange like, 10 different objects just to make this kind of story work again. So it was a
I
very
mean,
interesting job.
was this where you were also educating yourself about design at this stage? I mean, what
Yeah.
was like, were you guys always interested in design at Pratt? Was that what you studied specifically
So we
furniture?
went for industrial design, and it's Pratt
Okay.
industrial design is different from RISD, where RISD the furniture and the industrial design programs are separate. At Pratt, you could do one semester furniture, one semester car design, one semester whatever. But it was very at that time very much like big M modernist industrial design. Like you could go take a class in the clay department, but you could only take slip casting because that's an industrial process. You can't take hand building, right? Hand building is
Oh, I see.
craft. It's like a really
Mm.
clear delineation. This is craft and this is design. You know,
And coming from that, there was no idea that there was a studio practice. I mean, there was no we knew of some lighting designers and some sort of industrial designers, but the idea of having a studio practice in America was sort of unknown to us. And I think that Chen, seeing the examples of European studio practices, was also pretty formative in the idea that we could maybe do that too.
yeah. So at the time, Moss carried exclusively in the U.S. Studio Yob, Martin Boss,
Oh, really?
a lot of the Droch stuff, and then Peter Marigold, like like a lot of what like this kind of craft, small level, like kind of the kind of like basically like Art Nouveau atelier, right? Like it's like
Mhm,
you're
mhm.
kind of using some industrial processes, but it's really like very small scale and
Right.
handcraft. So I think that was a big influence, and also like seeing, like I think we actually met in this class, history of industrial design, and when you take a class like that, it really begins with like Raymond Loewy and the Eames, right? And
Yeah.
it's like everything before that, decorative arts isn't considered part of the story. And I think working there was like really kind of like opening up the history of objects further back because Murray also carried like all the royal, porcelain houses, right? So we were carrying Sèvres, Meissen, Nymphenburg, like it was just like you get to see like this is a sculpture of Voltaire that he sat for, right? Like it's
Okay.
kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so then alright, so you're working there, it's early times in Brooklyn, like, things are cheaper, you guys can experiment, but then how does the collaboration actually form? How do you guys, at some point decide that you're gonna form
So I had a
a studio?
studio, a very small studio, a couple blocks away from Kai, and Kai had a huge studio.
I was trying I
Okay.
had this idea to run a CNC router business, which was horrible, I
Why
mean, so
was it
I
horrible?
had
It
all
seems
this.
like
I mean, I think at the time people didn't really know what that was, and the the way of getting files to the machine was it's a lot more seamless now. So it was sort of this whole process, and yeah, we of course we couldn't afford a nice machine, so we had this sort of hacked together, used machinery type of thing. And I mean, it was massive. It was 19,000 pounds. It was, it could fit two sheets of plywood on it at a time with room to spare. So, it was taking up a
Wait,
huge
2
amount of
sheets, like, widthwise or lengthwise? 'Cause
lengthwise.
So it's
damn,
meant for you to
damn.
machine on one side and then load and unload the other sheet on the other side.
Oh, gotcha.
So I mean,
Okay, 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 okay.
occasionally I would surface down really big countertops for people or something, but like it, I mean, the point is I had to like get it. I had to pay for that space, and it was just not. I mean, anyway, that business was slowly dying, but I had this large amount of space and not enough work really at that time. So Chen would come over and to use our larger space, and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
just started working on some projects together.
Yeah, I was working on like in a like a windowless studio space on like North 13th, which is now I think like
What
the
tell me
hotel.
what
This
year
is
is that
this is
exactly?
like
Just so I can kinda, like
2010, 2000, like we
okay,
started
okay, okay, okay,
2011, but like
okay.
I
2010.
think I was there earlier. I think I was there
Yeah.
2009, 8, 9, something like
Yeah.
that. So it's also the
Okay,
recession
okay,
had just
okay.
happened.
Yeah, and at the time, like,
Right.
we were like a couple years into the recession and there were no real jobs, right? So like the difference between starting your own business and not having a regular job anyway, there was no risk difference in having your own business, right? Like you weren't like, oh, I'm gonna give up this like cushy, career to like start my own thing.
And I think a lot of people started during that time period. But yeah, I mean, we started. just working on these different projects, and like I mean, it was like the first 2 or 3 projects did not have any conclusion to them, but then uh, we started working. I mean, and we were sort of occasionally taking jobs to do like uh, I don't know, displays for Moss, as it was also slowly shrinking.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, so in the beginning, the idea was I had my own practice, he had his own practice, and then we were gonna do some stuff together. But then as we started getting press, it was like, you first get these like 100 word like little blurbs, and it's like too
Yeah.
little space to explain this guy you never heard of and this other guy you never heard of is doing this thing together. So we just decided to put everything under one name and just like it doesn't
Banner.
matter
Yeah.
if like this is 100% my project. We're just gonna call it all, under one thing.
I mean, can you talk a little bit about the way that the design scene was at that stage, Because I think there wasn't a lot of the definition that we have today at that time. I mean, maybe just, like, reminisce a little bit about, like, what the scene was like. Because you also said you guys started getting press, like, where? Like, are we talking about, like, is it, these blogs that started, Sight Unseen, those kinds of things?
Yeah,
What was
so
the scene like back?
The
Yeah.
the the way we launched was kind of, weird, because like, I was leaving Moss, so, like, this is, like, uh, design week of, like, 2011, and so, like, I had
Okay.
gotten some pieces into Moss, and then, Brent Sikoris, who, does Zek, the memorial stuff, he was briefly at that time, starting a design store for Philips DePury. And then so, he came from Moss, and I also, like, had some stuff there with Brent. And then we also had stuff at The Future Perfect. And so, like, it was like this design week where, like, all of a sudden there was, like, the same work, very distinct, like, it was these vases made of expanding foam that was in the 3 big spaces, right? And everybody was like, "What's going on? Who is this? Who is this?" That's, like, launching hard in
All of a
all the
sudden
big
in all the coolest, like, places, yeah, at the time,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, and so then we
Gotcha.
got, like, a little thing in, I think in Surface, we got a little thing in W, and,
Right.
so, like, yeah,
Which at the
big
time were,
magazines,
like,
yeah.
powerhouses,
Yep.
yeah, like, Surface at that time was, like, a
Yeah.
big deal to be in,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The other thing that we sort of did was and it's so much easier now, is we had really good photography from the beginning,
Right.
and I think that just made even these tiny things like a no-brainer for these magazines. They didn't have to send somebody out to shoot the thing. We just had good images for them,
Yep.
and that just made things easier.
Yeah.
Kinda blast out, and what was it like? Was it immediate where you started to see sales generate immediately from that launch, or was
Not
it or
really. I mean,
not
We
really?
weren't
Okay.
really running a true business for the first couple of years. Um, I mean, that not enough to sort of really pay for the space, and I was doing some other fabrication stuff at the time, but I think we did get on a lot of like mood boards everywhere. I think that was really fast, um,
Yeah.
and we would sort of hear from people working at those companies.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, because we had this big studio space, it was, like, a lot easier to, like, you know, so you want somebody to build some crates, like, we could bust out some crates, we could, CNC some stuff, and it was like it just meant that we were still able to be in studio every day, from the beginning, which
Yeah.
I think is difficult when for people to, like, find that time to, like, go to studio after work, right? Like, that's so hard. So, like, we were
Totally.
able just to be in the space every day, which was,
Or
very important.
maybe this is jumping forward, but I think because we sort of had that start where we were doing everything ourselves, building the crates, doing the photography, all the, shipping and packing and whatever that entailed. Like we still sort of do all that. We sort of have always taken wanted to control all of the aspects of the business. So it's all still in house. So we sort of I think we do take on too much of sort of our own things. We, are designing the packaging, doing small objects, and um, now social media at the time was really important. I think that was a huge, open field at that time.
Yeah, because like, Instagram, it wasn't like, basically started the same year that we were starting,
Right, I was gonna say around 2011, yeah, is when
Yeah.
kinda and so you guys were early on in Instagram? and
Yeah,
promoting
so what
your s
happened was
yeah.
back then, they would when you signed up for an account, they had these featured accounts that they automatically put you on to follow, and they would change those
Okay.
accounts out weekly, and we were one of those accounts, one week, and, like, we just woke up one day and we had 20,000 followers, like
Nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's amazing, and right, that's the thing that just can't happen anymore as
yeah.
organically. Yeah, that was cool, and so then alright, so then how do you guys start to, like, kind of formalize your relationship or the studio and say, "Okay, like, you're taking on little gigs, it's, to kinda make ends meet," but how does it start to you guys start to form an idea of your studio and your
So
practice?
we have some, like, products. I mean, they're very sort of, like, not even they're just sort of these we were making, like, something called cold cut coasters. We're trying to show them at the gift fair, which was not we're not getting a
I
lot of
have one.
traction there.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah,
like,
I
not
have
a
one.
great place to show them at the time,
Yeah,
and we're just sort of sitting there, I think maybe in the front of the gift fair and just being like, "This is not right. This is, like, not, um, a good fit for this place."
Yeah, I mean, the thing is I had a very skewed idea of how things work because I'd come from Moss, which was like this very special retail experience, right? It's like
right,
you can buy something that costs $40 there, or you can buy something that costs $500,000 there. You know what I mean? It's like, and
right.
Murray figured out a way to show all that stuff at the same level, and you never asked, why is this worth this and why is
Mm,
this worth that? And he would go walk the gift fair every year, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's just where you go to meet people like this." But it's like, there's only one Murray, you know what I mean? It was not like this,
right.
And he was also
it
collecting, like, somebody who made, like, official ship models for, like, the British, I don't know, some
Oh, yeah, it was this guy made miniature buildings for the royal family, he
Wow.
had, like, a little booth in the back.
yeah,
You could
like
find something like that, but most of it was just, like, stuff you would find at the mall, like, that's it was not the right fare for that. So, but that was the business model that most people had. It was like you sold twice a year, you brought like small objects to this fair and had wholesale accounts of these small stores around the country.
it still goes on, but basically that is also dead. I
Yeah.
mean, but so, like,
You mean
Chen's
business
idea
model
was
that's dead or
I just
just
like idea that you come to this place to, like, see what's new and buy it from here. And I mean,
right.
some people are still doing that, but it's just less powerful. But Chen, I mean, we were just like, how do we crack this problem? Like, what do we want to put in this
Mhm.
fair? Like, how can we win at this fair? And uh, and what is missing? The Javits Center is an awful place. Like, how do we like make a something novel here?
Yeah, and so we started, we're like I walked the fair and I was like, "Okay, people like things that look like things." It's just that easy, okay? So
What do you
we're
mean?
so we're
Things
like,
that
"Okay."
look like things.
Like figurative, but like it's not the thing. It's what I mean? It's like it looks like a
Yeah.
fruit, but it's not a fruit, right? So we're like, why don't we just make planters that like we went to the produce section and just bought a bunch of fruit, cut them in half, and poured silicone on one half to make a mold. And then we cast concrete in there and we made these little planters that like were made of cast concrete. And at the time we're like, okay, so people want to buy ceramics and we're like in the same size and product category as ceramics, but this is like a one-step casting process. It takes like and it's like this stuff that we were using, you can demold in 15 minutes, right? So it's like the amount of steps it takes to make the product is really low.
So I guess the question
Yeah.
was like, how did we turn it into a real business? And like, this is like the first time we were actually treating things as a real business. And I mean, what was cool about, I mean, the initial molds were truly like Chen said, they were half casts of like fruit and just had no interior. The interior was the bottom of a solo cup.
Yeah,
It
'cause
was
I didn't wanna invest in, like, carving that interior piece, right? That's not as simple as cutting a fruit in half.
But I think that I mean, the other thing that was great is to show at the Javits Center with plants in your booth. I think that was, like, also an idea, and, like, so we sort of caught on to this, both the small design store phase of people starting small design stores, and then also this sort of, giftable small plants thing, and it turned into a real business. I mean, we were the other sort of genius thing that happened was, like, we had, I don't know, maybe at the max, we had 10 different fruit molds of different fruits and vegetables and 10 different colors, maybe 7 different colors. So that's like 70 different SKUs that we could produce
Right.
for and
And
at like a
what
week,
was the
like
price? What was the
At the
price of
beginning,
those?
really cheap. The beginning, like, the wholesale, I mean, it was like $5 for, like, the little one, you know, because you could
Oh,
we could bat we're batching, like, 100 of them at a time, you know? It was like baking, like, a cupcake, you know what I mean? Like
but easier. I mean,
yeah.
but so we created this huge like thing, and like it wasn't, didn't have to wait for shipping from China. We were making it all in Brooklyn. It's a great story with all U.S. materials. So it was actually a really good product, and we made I think we made about $10,000. Sorry, 10,000 units. If I am estimating that over the
Yeah.
course of a couple of years, in in Brooklyn, and I was like, I don't know. I mean, it like it sort of was it was a real business, and we were like
okay, but
really.
so who was distributing those 10,000? I mean, you guys
Yeah,
sold some of
small
them, but you had
stores, you know, like, little
small
stores,
stores,
they'd place these, like, wholesale orders of, like, maybe, like, 20 pieces,
20
and
pieces, right.
then, like, a couple each wholesale order is only a couple $100, but, like, you get to the point where eventually you're selling them to, like I mean, then you start working with, like, larger retailers, and you start, like, getting, like, the Nordstrom routing guide, and you have to read, like, a 50-page guide on how to
Yeah.
pack your cardboard box. And I feel like also it's like when you're like a 26-year-old kid, you start like rubbing against like these actual big business and you're reading these documents. You're like, okay, this is how things are done, right? Like, and you kind of,
Mm.
start like bringing these practices into you slowly, like, yeah.
So were you guys originally thinking that you would go down that route of products that were kind of accessible, fun design, like was that the
Well, I mean, the
idea
initial things we did were totally inaccessible, and then we started doing these small objects that were really funding the business for up until like 2019 or
Yeah.
2018.
Well, the thing is,
Wow.
it was a good business, but we siphoned all the profits off to like make weird shit that nobody wants to buy, right? Like,
Okay.
so like that was the fun stuff. But like we got this
Right,
thing
right,
that
right.
like generates the income, and then we're not reinvesting it back into the process. We're like, making stuff that's gonna like basically end up at in the back of the studio. And it didn't
Mm.
take and yeah, it was until like maybe like I think
Well,
2016
just
was when we started with Patrick Parrish a little bit, and, like,
okay, okay.
we started getting into, like, gallery representation, and then, like, in 2019, we had our big show with Future Perfect, and that's when we switched over completely to really being, like, the high-end stuff is what is it is weird, and it also makes money.
I mean, it the weird stuff also was generating like press, which was good for us during the early days. So we never had to pay for
Which
like
would then
press.
sell the products more? The which would end up selling the product more, or just or
I
did
don't know,
the
I think they were 2 different, there were, like, 2 different people, consuming the 2 things, but then there was, like, a small niche of people in the middle that were, seeing both, And, like, for me, I always remembered, like, being, like even before I worked at Moss, being in design school and going to Moss and just being like, "I just wanna find something, that's under $100 that I could buy here because I just wanna buy a piece of it." Right? And I think we never forgot that, and even now, we still have, like, a little gift shop thing on our, web shop, on our website where, like, like, if you're a design student, you can buy something for $40, you know what I mean? Like, I always thought that that was an important thing to remain accessible to people.
It is also scratches an itch. I mean, like if you, it's like it's a different problem, like that you try to figure out for if it's a to be a true like a hard industrial designer and design something that can be designed for manufacturing and and to do that, it's like another sort of um, you know, satisfying thing you can do in your business.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that we make in the studio, they're, like, very complicated and hard to solve, uh, and but it's like, in a way, if I have unlimited time and we have all the tools in the studio, you can really solve any problem, right? But, like, if you
Mhm.
need to make something that has a perfect precision fit, 1,000 times, like, that's
Yeah.
actually a pretty difficult problem to solve, and you're dealing with a factory across, on the other side of the world. Like, how do you make sure that you get that precision fit every time? And it's a difficult problem to solve.
It's also a lot easier to sell to like have if you're selling something for $10,000, you can have a lot of leeway in that if you make some mistakes. But if you're trying to sell something for $3 or $5. Like, there's no leeway in that. You have to get that right.
Right.
Um,
All right. So then I want to kind of dive a little bit into once you guys started to work with Patrick, Patrick Parrish. I mean, he closed he closed his gallery now, but he was a superbly influential dealer for many many years. Um, how did that initiate? Did Patrick know your product work, and or were you guys making the other stuff, and that was kind of getting you exposure that led to Patrick really tell
I,
asking you guys to do a show?
I mean, I think I used to just go to all of Patrick's openings, and like
Okay,
just like and like I, not really have like I'm not like trying to sell myself to him. I'm just like here to like say hi and make just be at all the openings. And
support.
eventually,
Yeah.
yeah, and eventually he's like, oh, you want to? Can I come for a studio visit? And I think that's just I feel like uh, it was just like showing up. If you just keep showing up and talking and just being, you know,
and that's
uh,
like, if we ever talk, that's the Chen's best advice to give to any students, especially students in cities like New York. It's like, why are you in New York? It's so that you can go to all of these openings and to meet all the people there. And if you just keep on doing that, you become part of this world.
Right. I mean, you guys had already had some buzz around you. When you came to an opening, people knew you guys to some extent, or did you not feel
yeah,
that way? Or
sure, but it
I
was
mean,
like it was not like we didn't.
but
It was nothing big yet. You know what I mean? Like,
right,
yeah, it was like we had done some
because I
small
remember in
things.
2006, I felt like you guys were all over the scene in those days. I mean, that's when the days that I was kind of coming up too. I mean, I started in 2014, but by 16, I feel like we were kind of all over the place together,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah, but it's also hard to zoom out and kind of understand and contextualize that time. Um, so, all right, tell me a little bit about the relationship with Patrick. Did that kind of start you on the path that you're on now in terms of, the relationship you have
yeah.
with the future I mean,
S
or how
so,
did,
like,
yeah, I mean, tell me a little bit about it.
we'd always had a relationship with the Future Perfect. Actually, Kai's senior
Right.
show in college was in the basement of the Future Perfect.
2006, it was in the basement of the Williamsburg store, which was definitely not as high of an end store. It was a sort
I
of,
remember it, dude, on the
Yeah,
corner there, that
yeah,
little
yeah,
it was fucking crazy with a
yeah.
bunch of stuff in
a
it.
lot
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
lot of
yeah.
small sort of tchotchke things. and
Totally.
and so like we've been with them as they've grown up, and like, not, we weren't represented in those early years, but we had some stuff we were selling there. And we also had, Laura Young was a guest just starting as their director of
The gallery director.
gallery director. And we had worked with her at AreaWare. We had, sort of been aware of her for a number of years too. It's just like you grow into these, and I think at just some point that she and Dave were just like, I think it's time. You guys are ready, and it's time for you to
Mhm.
do this. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think so, in 2016, when we first started with Patrick, we did these sconces, that, were at Design Miami. I think that's the first year we did Design Miami, and I think we sold like 30 of them. I mean,
Wow.
it was like a pretty big like, "Oh, wow, okay, this is great," But then it's just like, I feel like just this one thing, it wasn't enough,
Mhm.
to like it was a good steady source of, sales, but like not like we needed to like really like do like a whole show of like all kinds of objects.
Okay, cool. Caviar scones. And I mean, what was the price of that piece? I mean, was this already in the collectible range, or was
It
this
I
was
think it was really low in the first show was shockingly low. I would have met, I sort of vaguely remember it was like $600 or something like that.
no,
okay.
that was
Mm,
like even now it's not that much. I think they're like 3,000. Like back
okay.
then, I think maybe like they were like $2,000. Like maybe a
Okay.
little bit under two, but they were not big. They were like it's a
Kai does
sconce.
not agree.
I have memories,
Whatever.
but
It was
maybe.
fine.
Yeah.
But let's say
I mean,
somewhere
you're thinking
between
about wholesale price. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like
Yeah.
yeah, but
okay, all
like,
right.
yeah,
And I'm just only asking context because people are always like, well, you sell 30 of something. Well, what is the price point for that? Can you,
yeah,
are those $3,000 It's different to sell $33,000 sconces than,
yeah,
a 600 or $1,000 piece. Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway. All right. So,
yeah,
okay. So caviar sconce so you wanted to like pursue that body of work and say, all right, let us produce a whole show of this style of work, or or what was the thinking after that?
No, I mean, I think the problem we've always had is like everything's like so process based that it's
Yeah.
like very difficult to like translate one technique into multiple types of objects. And I think when we did the show with the Future Perfect, we're like, okay, we're gonna broaden it out a little bit. It's like instead of this like very specific thing, let's just do stone in general. Like that was the theme. It was like everything's gonna have some stone in it, and like the show is called Romancing the Stone, and so like we started
Is this the
by
debut of the mirrors and
yes,
the
yes,
okay, okay.
yeah,
Those, because those are the pieces that people are probably pretty familiar with
yeah,
today,
yes,
from your practice, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so Romancing the Stone, and you also started the table, the sort of tables with the stones kinda
Yeah,
There had been some
wedged,
prototypes
stuck.
for that, but yeah, that was basically the start of it.
yeah. I mean, I think like for us with that, it was like, okay, we want to like show like massive, you know, because normally you encounter stone, it's in slab form, right? It's like almost like a 2D image, right? And we're like, okay, but like, how do we like treat it as an like a three-dimensional object? So we want to show you like the whole half of the thing, right? And then once we started working on that, we're like, but what about like also making it as thin as possible? So we did the stone rows lights where like, you know, we're slicing this stone like at like maybe like 4 millimeters back then. Now they're a little bit thicker because it's just like it was too fragile. But and then we were also, you know, th- we didn't know at the time that these mirrors were going to be like the big hit. But yeah, the mirrors we UV glue slices of stone to a piece of glass, and then we pour silver around the stones.
Also in those early days, I mean, I think we still love to experiment. We have the studio sites, like the shop space to do these experiments, and it's just we're still cheapskates. Like like when you're experimenting with a bunch of landscaping rocks, like that's sort of like where you can be fully free to sort of see what they can do to you can do to them. Um, I think we both had sort of stone collections that we sliced up in the process. Um, but you know, like yeah, it was just this sort of experimentation with what what those stones can do.
And so, like, how are you guys work in the studio? Like, when you guys get the show at the Future Perfect, are you like, okay, let's sit down and you both kind of bring things to the table? How does the collaboration work in terms of that? Because
So we don't draw anything really at the beginning. It's just like it's a very expensive and inefficient way to work. But we do like because we studied industrial design and we didn't come from like a craft background, we're like we have a very like wide but shallow base of knowledge about all kinds of different techniques. And so our studio, we have like pretty rudimentary tools for you know, a wide variety of materials. Like we have stone tools, we have metal tools, we have and that's what makes our studio different. It's like I think most people, you know, specialize in one thing or another, and it actually makes it a lot more efficient to work that way, but and a lot smarter. But like the way we work is like really inefficient, really expensive, and it's because we try to make it out of the actual materials like from the beginning, because you just know so much from picking up a piece of metal. You know it's too thick. You know it's too thin.
You
You know?
so, like, you can't know what it's gonna look like before you do it, and even if, like, with the caviar sconce or the mirrors or um, like, all the even the metal work that we do for the stone roses, like, you you can't draw it takes us longer to draw it than to just make it, and, I mean, we are drawing things technically we have learned technical drawing, we do technical drawings for products, but, like, we'll do them after the fact. We'll make the thing first, and we'll see what it feels like, it looks like, and then we can make a drawing of it.
Yeah, and because we're industrial designers, we do like, you know, we know enough to talk to more expert makers, you know? So like, you know, we once we like kind of prototype the thing, if we need like more specialized tooling to do something, then we'll make the technical drawings, you know, which, you know,
yeah, yeah.
that's
But I
when
mean,
drawing comes into
just
place.
like conceptually, you know, like
Yeah.
not even the drawing part so much, but like just conceptually, like when you guys came up with the mirror idea, did it start with the stone wanting to kind of like see what you could do with stone, or was it what
It
was
was
it that?
actually weirdly I think it was a cloisonné idea. It, we were gluing weird stuff to glass with all sorts of materials, and then I think we had some cheap and shitty mirror spray you can get at
You know,
the hardware
just
store.
spray paint, not even real silver.
Yeah, and it, we I think we there was just something there, and we didn't it wasn't quite interesting enough. It we were already using the we were starting to glue aluminum mounting brackets to the stone so that it could be hung. So sort of this Bauhausian idea where the interest in the mirror is the attachment points, the cleats to the wall, which did translate to the stones. But so I mean, we made like, I don't know, 5 or 10 of those.
Yeah, I think the first time we ever used UV glue, the Kai took a quarter and glued it to a piece of glass and then sprayed the silver spray paint around it. And on the back of the quarter was a threaded rod. And so you could just screw it straight into the wall. And we're like, there's something here, but we didn't know
Mm.
quite what it was, you know?
The glass. So one of the other things that happened when Voss closed down is we inherited all of the furniture, all of the store displays, and for years on all
Mm.
the trade shows, we were hauling all of these store fixtures to the Javits Center or to wherever we were going and setting them up. And they're all these heavy half-inch pieces of glass. So really, the early tests were also on broken pieces of these glass as we had dropped them or whatever over the years. So those were moss glass in those.
So really, you guys come from like experimentate, always constantly kind of experimenting and then developing your ideas based on these experimentations. Is this
Yeah, I mean, I think, Kai, after school, while I was at Moss, he was at Tom Sachs. So, it
okay?
was like he's
Oh,
from
okay, cool. I
a,
didn't know that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we got like a hardcore industrial design, very Bauhaus style education. And then, at the end, the last semester, we got this guy from the RCA was our studio teacher, and pretty much everybody that came out of Pratt that started their own studio had this guy's class because having a industrial design mindset doesn't really set you up for doing studio work like this. And it was because we had a guy that studied under Jasper Morrison and Ron Arad that like he kind of like taught us, Greg from Fort Standard, Ian Collins, who started Fort Standard with Greg and now is
Port Standard, yep.
yeah, and then Pat Kim, like you know all these guys that have their own studio practices. I think that was very formative. It was like
Mm.
to have like a more European kind of idea of what you can do or like why are you doing this versus like I
Mhm.
think the big M modernist industrial design mindset maybe isn't so uh, tailored to thinking like this, and so I think like and then I think because Kai had been at a art practice as well, um, we were like just much more like used to being like experimental in like an art studio kind of way, and yeah.
And like having more sort of messy, like not knowing what the result is going to be when you start out with the thing. I mean, the other thing I
Right,
think.
see, that seems like the scary part for me a little bit because it's like, when I sit down to make a piece, I'll definitely draw it, I'll render, I'll kinda and then kinda try to execute, but you guys
Mm,
are in there kind of like, going with your whims, going with, like, something that gluing a thing to a piece of glass and saying, "Oh, there's something interesting."
I think
That's
it'll
it's
coalesce
really
at some point. We're doing these experiments, and then at some point we sort of limit them to a process and a sort of language of materials. And we don't I don't naturally we sort of have given each each thing sort of breaks itself out into a family, which is defined by the process and the sort of inventory of materials that we use for it.
But, I think your
Right.
work
Huh.
is at the same time still like, it's not
Oh, yeah.
repeatable, right? In a way, identically not repeatable because it's the material's doing its own thing, right? Like, and I think that's a lot of what we are interested in is, like, it's not
Right.
the part of the process is, left up to chance, and so each iteration, there's some mutations that happen that that you don't control, right? And like and that's what's interesting. Like if you're gonna have to make something 100 times, it's like seeing those little mutations, it's like what makes it interesting for us, right? Like,
Right.
And to use your own skill to like try to make those mutations, turn into something like more beautiful gestures in that sense. I'm sure you also use.
Now, 2019, you guys do your first show with the Future Perfect. It seems like after that point, the studio may have changed, like not changed, but maybe accelerated in some way. Sales they started to grow exponentially as a showroom, as a gallery. Um, yeah, like talk a little bit about how 2019 to today, how that's been that relationship, because I think a lot of people that listen to Design Discord is like, look, their ultimate goal is to be with someone like the Future Perfect. You know what I mean? Most of them want to achieve this, to be with a showroom like that, be able to sell at that level, and, I think everyone's kinda like, "Well, how do I get there?" You guys obviously developed a relationship since the basement of their Williamsburg store, so it's a little bit different, but also, talk a little bit about the relationship with them, like how it is to actually work with a showroom, like the Future Perfect, so people can kinda understand what that relationship's like.
I mean, I think also, I mean, you have to like look at who shops there. You have to look at the work they're showing and find a gap in that market. You're trying to find something that is within your aesthetic and also fits in with their clientele. Um,
yeah, I mean, like
Mhm.
for example, our geology collection, we really thought about what is the aesthetic that works at Future Perfect and how to fit into that. Because very early on, we were doing stuff that was like a little bit more gross. You know what I mean? Like on the edge of being ugly. Which is like
you're part
interesting
of like
to.
some group of like the ugly designers at some point, and I mean, I was proud of that work too. But
No,
Yeah,
I know what you guys mean. I mean, people may not feel that way, but I get what you're saying. A little bit of like a Dino Chapman kind of the Chapman brothers kind of vibe, where there was some level of grotesque kind of aspect to it. Is that
yeah,
what you mean?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, and when we were younger, we were like, why would I use like, fine woods and brass and stuff? That's
Mm.
so boring. You know what I mean?
it's
Like,
like cheating.
yeah, that's cheating. I'm gonna turn trash into gold through the power of my mind, But like,
Right. It's
it's
funny
like
now that you guys like the work has gotten so refined with those nice materials. Now it's kind of like ironic that you would have felt that way. Do you
yeah.
think that that was because of the market kind of forced you guys in
I
that
mean,
direction?
Well,
we didn't have any money, but also like the idea we were also competing in those early days. All of the people, all of our friends that were succeeding were people that were woodworkers. There were people that had this sort of skill of of woodworking, and we didn't have that skill. And so it was sort of a rejection. If like if I can't do that, I'm gonna do something else. I'm not gonna make my own thing that has no like you can't judge me because I'm doing my the thing that I'm doing is not what you're doing.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
There was no way to like to judge the craft of it because you were
yeah.
inventing a craft in some way. It was like,
Yeah, it's
and
right.
like,
it's
yeah,
still
Yeah.
we're injecting foam into a spandex bag. Like, who's to tell me this is the right way to do it or wrong way to do it,
Right.
right? Like,
although we do this like technique where we build up this huge amount of solder and sand it down. It's pretty wasteful, but like we
this is the
posted
current one, yeah.
yeah, we posted an image online, and we definitely got everyone was like, "You're doing it wrong."
Yeah,
And I was like, "Well, that's the point." That's like I feel like we should have a show that's called yeah, doing it wrong. It's like that like why would if you did it right, it would not be interesting. Like
yeah,
that's it'd be the
I think
same thing.
there's, like, this curve, right, where it's like, just enough to execute the idea, but you don't know too much that you're saying no to, like, a lot of the possibilities. And I think
Right. Right.
because,
Right. Right.
we're constantly trying new things, I feel like we're constantly hitting that, like, point, and you kinda know it when you hit it, where you're like, "I'm just ignorant enough that the world is open," you know?
So, does the Future Perfect ask for certain things from you guys, or are they really like, listen, you guys go and you guys figured out what would fit the
Well,
gallery or
so
fit the showroom a
the
little bit
first
better?
show we did, it was just kinda like we're both on both sides, we're like, "Let's just see what works." And then turns out the mirrors were a huge hit, and
Yeah.
we're just I mean, we're maxed out on capacity on making mirrors at the studio, and we don't want to turn the studio into a factory. So we're like, okay, like we can do this amount of mirrors a year, and then like how do we uh design around like to do other things, or like maybe like instead of just doing really big mirrors, we could make things where like case goods where it's like the mirrors are smaller, so it's like more manageable. And just I
Mhm.
mean just the to moving big sheets of glass around, it's a nightmare, right? Like so, we're trying to think of trying to think of different ideas for using this mirror material, but in iterations that don't involve moving like, big pieces of glass around every
Yeah.
day.
It's really funny. I've talked about this on the pod and offline with people, but once you do have a very successful product or several successful products, right? How do you not turn into what you said, a factory? Because is it that you partially also find that it stunts your creativity when
Yeah.
you guys
Yeah.
just
And,
and is that something you try to reject and say, "Listen, we're not, we don't wanna turn into that."
yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that is important to us. Like, I think, the way we work, it's not, like we said before, it's not efficient. It's not like great at maximizing
Mhm.
profit and lowering cost. It's like we're doing this because it's enjoyable. And like, if it's not enjoyable, it's, like, why even do this?
Yeah, I mean, we've thought a lot about what we want at this point, and what I always realized that I wanted was the ability to experiment and have this sort of shop space and work with my hands in the studio. And like we could become managers and make it probably into a bigger business, but like, yeah, what's the point? Like, why? Like, I yeah,
I mean, a lot of you take
No,
these
I mean,
business courses, they're like, first thing you do is you hire somebody to do the part that you like, and then you do all the business stuff, right? Like, and you're like,
That's
why would I
right,
do
that's
that?
right.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't there at some point start to become like, okay, as your studio grows, you wanna do bigger and better things or whatever, you wanna experiment more, those things cost more, so you gotta
Yeah.
f you're like, "How do we manage our ambitions and the things we wanna make with like, well, we gotta make that profit or we gotta bring in, those
Right.
sales to
Right.
then be able to achieve more to then, continue to build the studio."
I
Yeah.
mean, I think we've kept the studio.
Without turning into a factory and
Yeah,
Yeah.
still having that creative, spirit that you wanna
Yeah.
keep, like,
I mean, we
that
do
is
have
the
these great assistants. I think we've made a choice to also keep the studio fairly lean, and because we don't want to get into that sort of trap of having to do that.
you keep so just trying to keep it where it doesn't grow out of control and you say, "Well, now we have to just freaking take orders every do as many as we can."
Yeah.
Right. And also, I mean, do you worry about the market being kinda saturated by the not do you ever think about that stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
Or
for a long time, we're like, when's the other shoe gonna drop? Because like, I think most people are aware that overall the market has not been fantastic the last couple of years, and the mirrors have been doing great every year. And
a boon? Yeah.
sometimes you're just like, how long can we like outperform the market? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of
Yeah.
you know,
Well, we
y-
talked about this a little bit offline, and, I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, yeah, I think everyone in the industry is kinda quietly, wondering what the heck's going on, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, "Oh,
yeah.
is this a downturn that's gonna continue, or is it" what do you guys attribute the softening, I'll say, the softening of the market to? And maybe not in your case with the mirrors, and in some cases, like, I have felt the same. I'm not trying to, but, like, inject my own studio into this, but it's like the mirrors do continue to sell at a good pace, drums continue there's certain things that just
Yeah.
always continue to sell at a good
I
pace,
think
right?
people are still
Um,
spending money, but I mean,
yeah.
one something that we've never been in part of is the sort of the resale market of our pieces, and I think that's maybe what's hardest hit on our market.
Yeah, the
What do you
secondary,
mean?
maybe. I don't know.
Well, we don't
The
have
secondary
there's no
value. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, there's
there
really
is
no
no
secondary
secondary market.
yeah,
value to ours,
so
right? So it's
it's
like,
There's no
yeah.
secondary market
Yeah.
period in
Yeah.
design. It's
Yeah.
only like very, like those sheep that sell and,
Yeah.
it's like maybe some Mark Newsome stuff
Yeah.
that keeps selling. But no, is that something that you guys are interested in, that there become a secondary market for your work to
I
increase
don't
the
it's not I don't
value?
think we think about it very much, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
you don't.
No, but I don't who it's really, like, who knows? Like, nobody knows, right? Like, why things have gotten soft, but,
Do you think
like,
it has to do with the real estate market?
yeah, well, if maybe, I don't, think we're smart enough to, like, figure out what's wrong, especially also, I'm just like, "Things aren't going okay for us, don't think about it too
Don't
much."
fuck it
You know?
up, don't mess it up, don't mess it
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I think that's also due to the fact that you guys have been, in the game this long, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's also like a matter of momentum
right,
that, and a trust that the designers have, and the relationship that the Future Perfect has to continue to sell,
right.
So, because I've said before, like, it's phenomenal to me that the Future Perfect continues to expand. Okay, and they're
Yep,
opening Miami, they have San
yep.
Francisco, they got they continue to do a lot of events and things like this. Um, Meanwhile, you're seeing a contraction in the art world that I would think that would be parallel, and I don't know this for sure, but I think we're gonna start seeing this a bit with the gallery scene, carpenters, they have a lot of locations, let's see what happens. Do you think that the business model of, like, carpenters, freedmen, uh, is gonna suffer and that the Future Perfect has kind of figured out the model for contemporary shopping of these high-end items? You think that they've kind of, like, figured it out and been able to, like, expand because of that?
I really don't know. I mean, but, like, earlier in the year before they opened, Miami, I was talking to Dave, and it's just like, this is, like, right after Liberation Day terrorists came out, and we're like, "Are we what's the move here?" And I think we both agreed that it's like, in a moment like this, you just gotta go into the breach, and see what you know what I mean? Like,
What happens?
everyone's scared, just like, you gotta go
Yeah,
headlong into the breach, you know?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they
What do you think,
operate
Kai?
in
I
a
mean,
very different manner. I don't know. I don't know what's better. I don't think that there's the grass is always greener, but, like, this is
the
our
thing
best,
is,
so
I was talking to a PR agent who was, like, kind of saying that, the model seems a little tired, the other model,
Yeah,
like, the way that the Future Perfect does their shows now, it's inside of the house, inside, it's got a different aura, like, the photos are not all just, like, in a gallery space,
right.
the way that was traditionally kind of done. I don't know, I feel like they have figured something out that everyone else is trying to kind of figure out, especially when the market starts to soften. I think everyone starts to
Right.
question their business models, you know
Yeah,
what I
and
mean?
the thing is,
Yeah.
the one thing I do trust with David and Laura is, like, you've seen how they've evolved over the years, and
Mhm.
it's like they're great at pivoting, and changing
Pivoting.
things,
Yeah.
and, like, it's
Yes.
like, they've had many different lives, and, like, same with us, and it's like so that's the thing I trust with them is that, like, if something doesn't work, they will change, and that's actually, very early on because I was working on Moss, in 2007, it was like this behemoth and it was like, invincible. And then the financial crisis happened, right? And they didn't really change the business model, right? It was like a
Mm.
very high
Mhm.
overhead, very expensive to run, uh, machine. And
Right.
it was like my first experience, like my first job, right? It's like watching this thing that you thought was like this institution kind of unravel, right? And it was
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
because they didn't, like I think they didn't change until it was too late. And I think with David and Laura, I think that I trust them 100% is that like they're not going to wait until it's too late to if something's not working, you know?
Do you feel like that's part of why sometimes, they do move through designers,
Yeah,
fairly
yeah,
quickly,
yeah,
I mean, they kinda it seems to me, right, I've never worked with them, I did, the chair show with them, but that was not working with them, so, it's I've noticed that they try things, they see
yeah,
what sticks,
yeah.
and then they kinda, you know they're not and correct me if I'm wrong, do you feel that they're in the game of building careers, or are they do they because I would say, like, carpenters and
Right,
freedmen are in that idea of, like, we're gonna stick to these 15 people for the rest of their
right,
careers,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for us to say because we've been successful with them, so,
Right.
like,
Right.
Yeah, it's so I don't know how to, how to gauge it, because our relationship with them has been so I mean, it has been since, like, 2006, so it is,
Yeah.
like, kind of like our entire working lives, so, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure other
Well,
people have different perspectives.
what do you think has, created the sustainability for you guys with them? Is it that, you know, you're able to kind of like produce new things that keep people interested all the time, or is it or
Yeah, I mean, I think we also like have the ability really to change up a lot, right? Which is and to also like not have the hubris to be like this is the one thing that we do, right? And like we're not, like the original idea is like I'm never going to use brass and walnut because that's cheating, right? And it's like then 10 years ago we're like, well, if I can't think of something interesting to do with these materials, then I'm not a very good designer, right? Like so, I could still have the
I noticed that about you guys from the beginning. It was like not about it wasn't like it's not an ego thing with you guys the way your practice is. I feel like you guys are very open to pivoting and moving and experiment, and that, and I think there's more rigidity when it comes to other designers when it comes to that. It's almost like
yeah.
they're trying to
That might also
force
come from
their
having two people in here. In some ways, we have to sort of pass things off to the other person and just trust that
Yeah,
that we'll do that.
and there's always somebody to be like, if some, and I mean, the best part about having creative partnership is you work through the bad ideas really quickly, right? Because you say it out loud, and the other person's
they're
like,
like, "No,
no,
thank."
yeah, and then it's
Yeah,
over, right?
yeah,
Whereas, like, if you're by yourself, you might get that thought might get stuck in your head for a while,
True.
Yeah,
So, obviously, November 6 what's the date? November 16th?
the fifth,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, November 5th, so less than a
yeah,
month away.
yeah.
Tell us what you guys have cooking, and what you're gonna be showing and what you're excited about. Because yeah, is this your second solo show there or
We
no,
had a
more?
small show in 2021 in San Francisco, but this will be the second big show in New York. Yeah.
I
Cool,
mean, we're still
occupying
The
ground
main
floor there?
the parlor
The
floor.
main
They
floor?
call it the parlor floor. Yeah,
Parlor floor,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
cool, cool, cool.
yeah.
I mean, we're taking some of the ideas we've had and sort of just pushing them further. I think that we always have this tendency to sort of get smaller and more sort of uh, precious. So we're trying to make things that are bigger. And then we're just something that we've avoided for our entire career because we don't know how to. I sort of talked about it earlier. Is we don't know how to work with wood. So it's like how how do we have anything interesting to say about woodworking? So it's like um, I think that we're trying to do some experiments with wood, and
And how's it
from this
going?
urban studio that we have, we've been
Yeah.
basically collecting some fallen logs from the neighborhood and trying to do something that we find interesting. So
Yeah, I mean, I like to think about it as kind of like a double album, right? Like, there's like part of it is like one half the show is like blowing up all the successful elements of the last show, So we're
hmm
taking the mirror, and we're making case goods with the mirrors. So like instead of it just being on the wall, it's like 3 dimensional. And then, much bigger stone rose chandeliers. We used to, I think the biggest one we used to make was like 3 roses. Now it's like 7, 8 roses. And just, bigger expressions. And then the wood
Cool.
stuff is like, I feel like we really were on this refinement track for like 5 years, and it's like, okay, let's go back and get a little nasty, like the wood is like, there's some elements of the grotesque in it, but also like a lot of very playful elements, like a lot of the inspiration came from like this cat tree I made for my cats a couple years ago, where like I was just like, let's put some feathers on this thing. You know what I mean? Like it's like now there's gonna be feathers on this chair, like it's
it may not sell, but that doesn't matter. It's
yeah.
we're also like I just want to like show that we can do other stuff. So
Yeah. It's
um,
like a real playful, experimental
and just
body of
push the
work.
boundaries of what our practice is. So it's like we're not so in a rut.
Yeah. I mean, I think
And
the wood carving is
yeah,
interesting. The show's called Basic Instinct.
okay,
Where following
nice.
from romancing the stone, you made to Basic Instinct.
Okay,
We're
cool,
sticking
cool.
with the Michael Douglas theme. Uh, but
That's
it's
cool.
also like, it's about like like wood is the most accessible material to most people, right? And like we've
Mm,
avoided it for 15 years. And so it's like why carve wood in an, you know, especially now when like you can get a robotic arm to carve whatever you want, right? Like, so
Mhm.
a lot of it is about like responding to very specific logs that are just literally from like a 3 block radius around the studio. There, a lot of trees, they start rotting from the inside and they have to be cut down. And we just like drag them back to the studio and you carve away all the rotted elements. And then you have this piece of wood that's already, it's informing you what it wants to become. Yeah.
And just talk a little bit, like, about if you feel comfortable, like, is this when you do a show like this with the Future Perfect, is do you guys collaborate in terms of are they helping with fabrication costs? Are they, are you guys showing them what you're gonna do and they approve it, or is it really left up to you guys and you guys control the whole fabrication process in terms of costs and all that too?
So I think we have a very I don't know how common this kind of relationship is, but because we know the mirrors move at a certain speed, we have kind of planned out throughout the year. Like they will just buy some mirrors, and
Upfront?
because it's just like the lead time
They
to
buy
make it.
inventory. They buy
Yeah,
inventory
yeah,
essentially.
because it's
Gotcha.
easier for us to batch them,
I
because
got
it's
you.
like logistically to produce, versus like producing one mirror every time they get an order. So like that kind of smooths out the cash flow for us for production and
Gotcha.
everything. Like we know X amount of, money is coming in, and cash flow wise, it's easy to predict for everybody, how things are going to go. And so that allows us to basically control the production costs on our end. And then in terms of like back and forth about what kind of work, they'll tell us we need XYZ type kind of product categories. And then,
Oh,
But
really?
also
Interesting.
yeah,
also
Cool.
XYZ of like what will fit in the space for this show.
yeah,
We need two ceiling lights because that'll look good in the space.
yeah. And
Cool. All
so,
right, and you guys don't mind those boundaries? I mean, it seems
No,
like
I
you guys
we
like to fit
I
within.
like
Yeah.
boundaries. I mean,
Yeah.
like I want even the sort of monetary thing. It's more. It tells you what you can do and what you can't do in the situation.
Yeah, no, I like that. I actually wouldn't mind that kind of stuff either, where it's like, listen, we credenza send real sell well, make us a credenza, I guess,
yeah, yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah,
But you still get to do your thing within the
yeah, exactly.
credenza idea, so it doesn't
Yeah,
really, it's not limiting, right?
yeah.
Um, Interesting. Okay. Um, so how are you guys doing in terms of time? Are you guys ready?
I think
You
we're
guys
better than we've ever been,
Yeah.
but of
nice.
course, there's still a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah, I think like a month ago I was like really freaking out because you couldn't see the things tying up yet. But now it's like everything's at like 95%. And it's like, okay, it's gonna be a hard 2 weeks, but that's a gap that we can close. Yeah.
And is it like so do these item the new pieces that you'll make, is this now something that essentially if they start selling well, they go into your production
Yes. So we would take
flow?
commissions off, and then like a
Yeah.
lot of this was also developing like a network of fabricators that we can work with, like
Oh, cool. You're
y-
using outside fabricators for this a bit.
yes, yeah. I mean, like for the wood, the case goods, it's like, you know, I I'm fine doing some wild wood carving stuff, but I'm not
Right.
a fine woodworker. So and we don't have the space set up for we don't have a jointer, you know what I mean? Like so like it's like for the fine woodworking, we have somebody doing that, and then we're just cladding it with the materials like the glass mirror stuff that we can do in
Gotcha.
But
house.
also
Gotcha.
everything is both a prototype and a finished product. We're always trying to improve the design, the ease of construction, the make things easier for the art handlers. On the other end, when we sell something, it's like you're always just trying to make it better. And yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah,
I don't try to ever make it a prototype here. It's got to be the finished product, try to figure out all the little things cuz once you do go into production, you don't want to have to like a sale came in then you're trying to figure out how to actually make the thing livable, or transportable. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Uh
funny that now everybody's just like rendering stuff, and it's like you sell off of a rendering, and then you have to figure out how to make it, right? And you're like, That's so crazy to me.
I don't know how that works. I've never yeah, I assume that's happening. I
Yeah.
don't know
Oh,
that many
I
people that
even like 10 years ago, like before there was AI, I knew people who were like creating renderings for companies
right.
of products that didn't exist that were going into ads.
That's
And then,
absurd.
you know what I mean? Like it was,
It's absurd because then what is the lead time could turn into 6 months to a year if it
yeah,
doesn't, it's just
yeah,
crazy to do that.
yeah,
Yeah. I feel like there's a designer out there that I think does this because I was like, there's no way that that thing is real,
yeah,
but it looks so freaking realistic. They're all like,
yeah,
okay, well, we'll see.
yeah,
Um, I can't do that with my work. It's impossible to render the textures and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. Um, kind of like wrapping up a little bit. I just what are y'all's sentiments about like just the state of these of the industry right now? There's all this there was a lot of chatter about what collectible design is and what's fine furniture and all this stuff. Do you guys have like what are you guys seeing out there in terms of what you're seeing with the design industry in New York right now? Just some ideas,
I
some
mean, it's
thoughts.
both like a lot hard. In some ways, it's harder to break into it, but other ways, there's a lot of there now is this sort of idea of having a small studio practice and galleries that support it, which there wasn't.
Yeah,
So
it really didn't exist in 2000 before 2011, really, because like we would see the for us that was something Europeans did. Like, you know what I mean? Like that it's just like the concept of coming out of school and like having a studio practice was just inconceivable, you know?
I mean, I think that the it's much healthier than it was. There's more people doing it. There's more really interesting people doing it. I you expect. I mean, the you when we were initially starting, you think that the European market is much better, but actually, I feel like New York is a pretty good market for selling design. And
Yeah, I mean, we're a big country with a big market, It's actually like it's great
I
to
would
be
say that
here.
the Europeans are dying to get into our market by,
Yes.
yeah, I would say because there seems to be like price suppression in Europe just because people just, are not willing to pay. And Americans, just because we're such capitalists here, it's like, all right, let's get we like the
Yeah.
good
when we
stuff, the
this was
expensive stuff.
years
Yeah.
ago when we were in the show in Brussels, and like we had some lights that were selling that were like I don't know, they weren't that expensive.
Yeah,
They were
maybe
like
like $5,000, $6,000,
yeah,
nothing crazy,
and the people next to us were selling things for like $300 equivalent. It's like and so people, I mean, we were there. The people that were going to the show were like, "Why is yours so much more expensive?" And I mean, uh, there's institutional support for designers in the Netherlands, and like in some ways, that's wonderful that people can work without this creative pressure there or this monetary pressure there. But like, it's also wonderful to work in a world where like there's like this reason you're doing this path to a client who's telling you what to do. So
No, it's interesting. I just because, I think the scene feels a little more fragmented these days than maybe it did maybe 10 years ago. And I often wonder people that have been through that time period if you're feeling that way. I feel like there's a ton of designers out there, but it's harder to distinguish what's good
right?
anymore. It's almost like
Right.
there's so much of it that it kind of exploded to a degree that it's hard to kind of like the scene felt like it used to be able to be a little more understood, and the scene is kind
Yeah,
of
and also feel like, when we started, it was like there was no prestige to it, because it was not like
right.
really a thing, right? And
Mm,
so like the people that were doing it were like really serious because it's like, you're like nerding out about chairs when you're like a kid, you know what I mean? And so I think now it's like drawn in a lot of people that maybe would have been in art or fashion, and it's like a different type of person, who's doing it as well. And it's I think the exposure of the scene has like, because it's grown, it's like it's not just this like very small group of like very obsessive, people, you know.
right. Well, guys, it's been a good convo. I feel like we could talk for hours about this
Yeah.
stuff, but it's been really great. And I think a lot of people that listen to us will be excited that you guys came on and shared. And, you know, I always like to dig a little bit into like the market stuff and a little bit of that. But I appreciate that you guys were, you know, you know, just open and honest with us. It was cool.
Yeah.
I hope I get an invite to the November 5th show.
Oh,
I haven't gotten an
absolutely.
email
Yeah.
about it yet, but
Yeah,
I
it
would
hasn't
love
gone
to
out
be
yet.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't sent it out yet, or what?
Not yet. Yeah.
Okay,
Not
all right,
yet.
cool.
Yeah.
But definitely can't wait to see your work. And so, just for people that don't know the Future Perfect, maybe just tell them some of this, where it is, what you know, when they can see your work, how they can see it.
Yeah, so this is going to be in the house in the West Village in New York at 8 St. Luke's Place, and I think it is by appointment only. So like you have to go on the website and make an appointment.
If you haven't been, I recommend you make an appointment because they're very nice and it's a cool place to see.
Yeah, it's an incredible space.
Yeah, we just went recently during whatever second design week was, and it was awesome. I hadn't been there in a long time, and it was just nice. I saw your mirrors all over the place. I was like, we did a little shout out on Instagram for you guys.
Yeah, I
So
saw
anyway,
that.
but
Thank you.
listen, all right. So November 5th. Tell me the name of this show again. Was not romance.
It's
part
called
two.
Basic Instinct.
Basic Instinct. It's funny because that dates us a little bit because that
Yeah.
was like one of the best movies of
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
So that's really funny. But all right, guys, thanks again. And guys, if you haven't subscribed, it really is helpful if you just hit the damn button. I know it sucks to do it, but just hit the damn button, hit the like button, send us a comment, whatever. By the way, everyone's been coming up to me, you know, whenever I'm out and saying hi, and I really appreciate that. And Alyssa's does too. So thanks for the support. Anyway, thanks for joining another Design Discord episode with Chen and Kai. This has been awesome, guys. And I have loved and admired your work since I've been in the design industry. So I have loved seeing how you guys have grown and all the cool shit you do. And I always feel like you're my main competition when it comes to mirrors. So I'm always a little bit like, no wonder I didn't make that sale. Chen and Kai sold it to them. I'm just kidding. But anyway, wish you a lot of luck with the show. And again, thanks. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Fernando.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers. Bye.